Hi, welcome to the tutorial on processing distributed transactions. The objectives of this tutorial are to understand how to process distributed transactions, draw from cash calls or bill the partners for the distributed expenses, pay the partners for the distributed revenue, and revise the distribution documents. After distributing the expenses and revenue in the JD Edwards EnterpriseOne system, the managing partner must process the distributed transactions to recover the expenses from the partners and to pay the partners' share of the revenue. Depending on how you manage the cash flow of your joint venture, you draw from cash calls and/or bill the partners for the joint venture expenses. To draw on cash calls, you use the Assign, Draw, and Create JEs for Cash Calls program RO9J620. Set up the processing options and the data selection for the program as required. You can specify a service tax date or GL date and a date value that will be used to select distributed transactions and cash calls. For example, if the service tax date is February 29, 2016, the system will select all unprocessed distributed transactions that have a service tax date earlier than or equal to this date. Also, the system will select the cash calls that have an effective date earlier than or equal to this date. When you run this program, the system assigns the cash calls to the distributed expenses. Exclusive cash calls are assigned first. For each cash call applied, the process creates a journal entry to draw on the cash calls. To bill the partners for the other distributed expenses, you create invoices for each partner using the Create JV Invoice Transactions program, RO9J406. To pay the partners for the distributed revenue, you create vouchers using the Create JV Voucher Transactions program, RO9J407. You process the insider business unit's share of the expenses and revenue through journal entries. You create the journal entries using the Create JV Journal Entry Transactions program, RO9J404. Set up the processing options and data selection for the programs as required. For example, you can specify a service tax date that will be used for selecting unprocessed distributed transactions to create invoices, vouchers, or journal entries. Then run the programs. The system processes the selected distribution records and creates joint venture journal entries, invoices, and vouchers. You can revise the distribution documents and the transactions included in the documents if needed. For example, you can reverse transactions that were included in a joint venture document, or you can void the entire document. Once a transaction is reversed, it is available to be redistributed to another partner or deleted to be reprocessed. To update and redistribute the transaction, you use the redistribution transaction that was created as a result of the reversal process. The redistribution transaction has the transaction status available to redistribute. You can make the necessary changes to the redistribution transaction. For example, you can reassign the transaction to a different partner or change the transaction status. Then, you can reprocess the redistribution transaction in a new joint venture document. To learn more about how to process distributed transactions, visit the set of task-based tutorials, Processing and Managing the Distributed Transactions in the Learning Path, Creating and Managing Joint Ventures in JD Edwards EnterpriseOne. You can access the learning path from learnjde.com. Thanks for watching.